Pretty maids all in a row, walking the dog. Just a walking the dog. If you don't know how to...
On the Talk of the Quad Cities, 11:30 a.m. and 99.9 FM KQNA. It's time for KQNA's Pet Corner. KQNA's Pet Corner is sponsored in part by High Country Pet Clinic, Carpet One Prescott Granite, and Olson's Grain. And now, from Animal Disaster Services, here's your host for KQNA's Pet Corner, Dusty Spittler.
Good afternoon, Quad City listeners, and welcome to the Pet Corner program. My guest today is Nancy Windheart, an animal communicator. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Dusty. It's great to be here.
How's your new year going so far?
Oh, it's just fantastic.
Good.
My animals and I are having a great time.
Wonderful. Glad to hear it. Well, you and I were introduced to each other through a mutual friend, Terry Hendrick from the Noah Thrift Store. And I actually have had one other animal communicator here last January, a friend of mine from down in the valley. And so I just wanted to welcome and have another one here to start the new year off, and that is local. So why don't you tell our Quad City listeners what an animal communicator does?
Well, what I do is communicate with animals telepathically. And telepathic communication is something that all beings who are on the planet can do. Animals, people, we can all do it. All species are able to communicate telepathically. It's just that humans tend to forget because we have spoken and written language. So what telepathic communication is getting the animal's thoughts, feelings, perceptions, perspectives about their lives and whatever is going on with them that the people are wanting to know about. I view my job as being a translator for the animals. So my clients call me with something in particular that they want to discuss with their animals, and then we can have a two-way conversation.
So how long have you been doing this?
Well, the long answer to that question is probably since I was a child. Okay. As a professional animal communicator, I've been practicing professionally for about 5 years.
Okay, great. So there actually is a professional association for animal communicators.
There's not necessarily a professional association, although we do have a professional directory.
Okay.
And you were saying you have a friend who's an animal communicator down in the valley.
Yes.
As it turns out, Arizona has one of the highest densities of animal communicators in the country.
Interesting.
There are a lot of wonderful animal communicators who are living and working here in Arizona, and it's great.
Debbie would listen to animals.
Yeah, Debbie Johnstone.
Yes, thank you. Her last name escaped me. Sorry, Debbie. But yeah, I've known her for a few years, mostly through email and phone calls, but she's helped me with a critter of mine. So, but interesting to hear that Arizona has such a density.
Yeah, it's really a wonderful thing. And many of us know each other, if not personally, at least, we know who each other is. And a lot of us collaborate and work together. And, it's the more people that do this work, both professionally and non-professionally, just in their daily lives, the more peaceful and harmonious world we'll have. So the more the better.
To coexist with our critters.
Absolutely.
So you've been doing this professionally for about 5 years. Has it all been here in the Prescott area?
No, I actually moved to Prescott in 2007. Okay. And before that, I was living in northern Michigan.
Oh.
And spent most of my life in the Midwest, had always felt a call to Arizona and to the Southwest. So finally in 2007, I made it here.
Great.
So,
Great. What would you say on average, if you can, that at least having been in this area, people call you about? What is it they're asking for?
Well, first of all, let me preface that by saying that I do a lot of my work, probably most of my work, long distance.
Okay.
So I have clients not just in the Prescott area and the Quad City area and, all of northern Arizona, but I have a lot of clients all over the world, actually. But people's issues and why people contact me, whether it's in person or long distance via the phone or Skype, they're very similar. There'll be oftentimes behavior issues, wanting to understand what's going on with their animal, why they're doing a particular thing, whether it's, litter box issues or training issues. I do a lot of work with show animals, who may be a little bit off their game and their handler or their person is wanting to know why. And I would say a very large part of my practice is working with animals and their people around the time of death and end of life.
Before and after?
Before and after. Okay. And that's one of my favorite things to do. It's one of the most sacred things that I do. Talking with animals about their journey as they get to the end of their physical lives.
And when they're ready.
And when they're ready and how they want it to be and what they want their people to know. And then also working with animals who are on the other side and getting their perspective from being out of their body and what that's like.
And that brings comfort to their human caretakers.
So much.
Once they've crossed over to know, reassure them that they made the right decision.
Absolutely.
And that they're doing okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I see on your website, which is really nice, actually, and since I'm talking about that for our Quad City listeners, what is your website?
It is my name, NancyWindheart.com, and Windheart is spelled Windheart.
And do you have a phone number that they can contact you?
Sure. It's 928-499-1969.
I have to remember there are folks out there that still choose not to do the interview.
That is just fine. And my email, I can be emailed through my website or at nancy@nancywindheart.com.
Easy enough. Wonderful. So on your website, you had a lot of interesting things on there. I really liked your placement, your page about the code of ethics for interspecies communicators. That was really heartwarming. That was nice to read.
And that is something that was written by my mentor and friend, Penelope Smith.
Oh, yes.
Who also lives here in Prescott.
Yes, she does.
And
she's world-renowned.
She is world-renowned. She's written many beautiful books and articles. She has edited, she founded and edits the Species Link magazine. She's one of the pioneers in the field. And she created and wrote the Code of Ethics years ago as guidelines for our profession because, like we said, there's not really a professional association.
Sure.
But most of the people who are working in this field do have the highest ethical intention, and having that code of ethics spelled out and that we can all, to remind us what we're here for and how we can best serve people and their animals. It's really important. So we all owe Penelope a big debt of gratitude for putting that down on paper.
Well, I'm glad that you have that on your website. And in conjunction with that, a real informational piece is you have a tab also that is 10 things you need to know before hiring an animal communicator.
And that list was compiled by a colleague of mine, Val Hart, who is an animal communicator. I believe Val is based in Texas. And she put that fantastic list of guidelines together a few years ago. And I posted it on my website with her permission because it's just terrific. And it gives people really clear guidelines about what they need to think about and what they need to look for when they're then thinking about hiring an animal communicator to work with them. And the most important thing really is to find somebody that people feel comfortable with.
Yes.
And that they feel like they connect with and that they can trust. And that's a very individual choice that will vary for everybody.
Definitely. And that's great that we have the Skype ability now because of so much. I mean, talking on the phone is wonderful too, but when you can really put a face and not necessarily for you, but for the person who's thinking of hiring you, you know, it just gives them a little more personal contact with you.
Exactly.
And so your consultations that you do, we briefly talked about that, but you also said that you do some Reiki.
I do. And for those listeners who may not be familiar with what Reiki is a form of energy healing that comes out of Japan and has been here in the world now for many, many decades. And Reiki is a complementary therapy that can assist with all kinds of issues, from physical to emotional, psychological. Reiki's just fantastic, and animals in particular respond really, really beautifully to Reiki because they understand the energy and they feel it.
And explain to our Quad City listeners that may not know and only have heard the term Reiki. It's like a hands-on where you're feeling the energy from the body, or however you want to explain it.
Yeah, you know, it can be practiced hands-on, and that's most people's first introduction to it. Okay. And so, for example, a lot of body workers like massage therapists therapists will also be trained in Reiki and will use Reiki as part of their hands-on body work with people. And that's one way to use it with animals, is in person, hands-on. A lot of animals actually prefer Reiki off their body because they're very, very sensitive. And so it can be used that way. Also, it's possible to use Reiki long distance. And those Reiki practitioners